Father's Day in San Antonio has always held a special significance. The heat of June pressed down heavily, the sun pouring onto wide, dusty streets, neighbors hanging flags on their porches, and the Mexican restaurants in my neighborhood packed with customers from early morning. I sat inside my small house, the beige walls already faded, the ceiling fan humming steadily above, trying to push back the suffocating air outside. On the coffee table, I had placed a pitcher of iced tea with lemon slices, a habit I had kept since my wife's passing. It has been 18 years since Ellen passed, and through all those years, I have raised our daughter alone. My name is Thomas Grayson. I am 58 years old. I work as an air conditioning repairman, a trade I often joke about as keeping people cool even when life is unbearably hot. I own a small shop, just me and a helper, driving an old truck across San Antonio year-round to fix air conditioners and install heating systems. It is hard work, dirty, dripping with sweat, but it has kept me alive and raised my daughter, Lily. That morning, I woke up early, wiped down the wooden table in the living room, and set the family photo frame back on the shelf. It was a picture of Lily at 6, hair tied in pigtails, grinning wide, standing between Ellen and me. I thought that today she might remember these little things. Even though over the years I had grown used to ordinary gifts, or sometimes nothing at all, I still waited. Inside me, there was a flicker of hope, small but still burning. Around 11, there was a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on the rag tucked into my waistband and went to answer. Lily stood there, her brown blonde hair tied in a neat bun, light makeup on her face, wearing a thin coat that made no sense in the Texas heat. Beside her was Ethan, her husband, in a pressed shirt and polished leather shoes. He was tall, his face always carrying the air of someone standing on a stage, and the way he looked at me held something of pity, something of contempt. "Happy Father's Day, Dad," Lily said sweetly, though her eyes never really met mine. She held out a small gift bag. I smiled, keeping my voice cheerful. "Thank you, sweetheart." We moved into the living room. I poured iced tea, invited them to sit on the worn sofa. Ethan wrinkled his nose, as if the fabric was beneath his standards. I pretended not to notice. I opened the bag. Inside was a pair of navy socks, the kind found easily in a Walmart discount bin. The price tag was still attached, $7.99. I held the socks in my hand, feeling them light, as though I were holding nothing at all. "Practical, Dad," Lily said with a faint smile. "Something useful." "You do not need anything fancy," Ethan added with a half grin. "Yeah, Thomas, a working man like you does not need extravagance. Socks are just right." The room suddenly felt smaller. I drew a long breath, forcing a smile. "Very useful indeed. Thank you, both of you." I glanced toward Ellen's photo on the shelf. Her gentle eyes seemed to be watching me. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second like a pin pressed into my chest. They did not stay long. Lily was busy, always busy. "We are having dinner with Ethan's parents," she said as she stood, glancing at her phone and adjusting her scarf. Ethan simply nodded, his smile cold. When the door closed, silence fell over the house. I stared at the socks on the table, my fingers brushing the dangling tag. I told myself at least she remembered. But inside, the emptiness widened. I went into the kitchen to pour another glass of tea. On the counter, my old laptop was still open. I scrolled through Facebook to pass the time. Then I saw it. A newly posted photo appeared clear on the screen. William, Ethan's father, sat in a fine restaurant downtown. He raised a glass of wine, smiling brightly. On his wrist gleamed a brand new Rolex Datejust, its face shining, steel bracelet catching the restaurant lights, glowing like a declaration. The caption beneath, written by Lily. "To the best father-in-law, a gift that matches your class. From your loving daughter-in-law, Lily." I gripped the mouse so hard it creaked. My heart clenched tight. Just hours earlier, I had been handed socks worth $7. And he, a man who had only known my daughter for a few years, received a $15,000 watch. Worse, I knew exactly where that money had come from. I had transferred a billiards to Lily for urgent expenses. In that moment, I did not shout, did not smash a thing. It was only a silence so heavy it pressed on every nerve, like standing in a broken air-conditioned room in the Texas summer, listening to the clock hammer away, with no breath of cool air to escape. I asked myself, what am I in my daughter's eyes now, a father, or just a walking wallet? Outside the window, the sun still blazed over the neighborhood. Children still played ball in the yard, and neighbors grilled barbecue in their backyards. The whole world carried on as usual, except me. I sat in the kitchen, the laptop screen glaring, William's Rolex gleaming like a blade against my eyes. In my head, there was only one thought. I, Thomas Grayson, a father who once poured sweat and blood to raise Lily, am now worth no more than a cheap pair of socks. Where are you listening to this story? Tell me. I want to know how far this sigh can reach, from small houses like mine to any corner of the world. Because sometimes Father's Day becomes the day when the heart of a man is torn apart and no one even notices. After Ellen passed, the house on Maple Street in North San Antonio became suffocatingly empty. I still remember that winter morning, the pale gray light filtering through old curtains, the smell of disinfectant lingering in Ellen's bedroom. Lily was only 10 then, her cheeks still round, her eyes red as she stared at the empty bed. I knelt, pulled her into my arms, and silently promised my wife that I would never let our daughter go without. I do not know where I found the strength to speak those words, but perhaps a man, when left alone, always finds a way. The years that followed were a blur of work. In Texas, there is never a shortage of air conditioning jobs, especially in summer when the heat burns into your skin, the temperature outside climbing over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. There were days I climbed onto rooftops at 2 in the afternoon, the sun beating down on my back, sweat soaking through my work shirt. The roof grew so hot that the soles of my rubber boots nearly stuck to the metal. I bent low, wrench in hand, tightening bolts while cicadas screeched in the trees below. My mouth dry, my mind focused on one thought. I had to finish so Lily would have money for books, money for her fall tuition. Some summers, I worked 12, 13 hours a day. At night, I came home in clothes reeking of oil and steel. Lily often sat at the old wooden table in the kitchen, doing homework, waiting for me. She would set a glass of cold lemonade by my chair, saying, "Dad, drink this. It's too hot out there." I looked at her, my heart swelling with both sorrow and pride. She had lost her mother too soon, but at least she still had me, and I would never let her feel unloved. I once had a 1996 Ford F-150. That old pickup was my pride, the only thing I ever bought just for myself after years of labor. I had replaced bolts one by one, polished the paint, and installed a new radio to play country music while driving the highway. But when Lily was accepted to the University of Texas in Austin with tuition of $40,000 a year, I knew my dream of keeping that truck had to be set aside. I listed it for sale, my chest aching as I watched the buyer drive it away while I stood on the porch, fists clenched in my pockets. Yet the very next day, I carried a receipt showing Lily's first year of tuition, paid in full, and when I saw her radiant smile, the regret vanished. That was the one time I saw my F-150 transformed into a living scholarship for my daughter. During Lily's years at college, I kept pushing myself to exhaustion. At times, I picked up weekend shifts, repairing units for schools and restaurants. I remember one summer when the air outside boiled above 104 degrees Celsius, and I was on a roof fixing an old condenser. My face flushed red, my shirt soaked. I had to stop, gasping for breath through dizziness. But my mind repeated the same refrain. Lily is in her dorm. She needs money for books next semester. I wiped my sweat, telling myself to hold on just a little longer. On weekends when I could, I took her to Brackenridge Park. I bought her ice pops while I sat on the bench watching her run across the grass. In those moments, it felt like we were back before Ellen's passing. Just the two of us, but I tried to make her believe the world was still warm. I remember one autumn afternoon, golden leaves drifting down. Lily sat beside me and asked, "Dad, do I look like Mom?" I looked at her and nodded. "You look like her in the way you care, in the way you smile." She laughed, eyes shining. That was the first time I had felt true hope since Ellen's death. On late nights when Lily studied for exams, I went into the kitchen to make tacos with ground beef and lettuce. I placed a plate by her books, and she ate while telling me stories from school. She spoke of dreams of earning a degree, working at a big company. I listened, my chest brimming with pride. Every late shift, every burning rooftop, every dusty highway ride felt worth it, just to see my daughter nurture her dreams. So many times, I gave up my joys to provide for her. Friends invited me to go fishing on weekends, but I declined, needing to work another shift. I once dreamed of restoring my father's small boat to row out onto Calaveras Lake like we used to. But year after year, the money I saved drained into tuition, books, and later Lily's rent in Austin. I did not regret it because I believed she was the continuation of our family. The day Lily graduated, I drove my old truck more than 3 hours from San Antonio to Austin. I wore a white shirt already fraying, sat in the parents section, and watched my daughter step onto the stage for her diploma. In that moment, every drop of sweat and blood felt worth it. I remember crying, my hands trembling as I clapped with the cheering crowd. Lily hugged me, whispering, "Dad, I could never have done it without you." Those words felt like a reward, like a weld sealing the cracks in my heart. I do not know when it began, but inside me a simple faith grew. If I sacrificed, Lily would be happy. I believed every drop of sweat on summer rooftops, every dollar from selling my truck, every midnight taco was a brick building her future. For many years, I lived only to build that house of dreams for her. But I never imagined that one day those sacrifices would mean nothing in her eyes. Less than a year after graduation, Lily met Ethan at a networking event in Austin. He was 5 years older, working in his family's investment firm. I remember the first time Ethan came to the house, wearing a pressed suit, his hair slicked back, leather shoes shining like mirrors. He shook my hand with a smile that was measured, his eyes scanning the room as if he were calculating the worth of every piece of furniture. I did not think much of it then. As long as Lily was happy, that was enough. After so many years with just the two of us, I believed that having a man by her side would make her steadier. I did not realize that from that moment, the distance between Lily and me would begin to grow. Their wedding was held at a resort outside San Antonio. I paid for all the flowers and the live band, though it was money I had set aside to repair the roof of my shop. On that day, Lily looked radiant in her white gown, holding Ethan's hand, her eyes shining. I stood in the guest section, filled with pride yet swallowing tears. But during the reception, I overheard William, Ethan's father, say to a friend, "At least he has financial backing from her side." He spoke as though the money I had poured into the wedding was nothing more than an investment contract. His words cut into me like a small wound. After the wedding, Lily and Ethan moved into a luxury apartment near downtown. I visited on Saturday afternoon. The place gleamed with polished wood floors, a kitchen full of sleek electronics. I sat on the white sofa, feeling out of place. Lily poured me coffee while scrolling through Instagram on her phone. I asked about her job. She muttered vague answers, eyes fixed on the screen. Ethan sat across from me with a glass of wine, smirking. "Dad," Lily said softly, but with a blade hidden in her voice, "you would not fit in with our circle of friends. They are all investors, talking about stocks and startups. You would be bored." I froze. When had she started to think I was not enough to sit at her table? I had given my life so she could earn that degree, so she could step into that world. And now, in her eyes, I was unworthy of it. Another time, I invited them to dinner at my place. I worked hard smoking brisket, cooking pinto beans, and baking cornbread, the way Lily used to love as a child. They arrived more than an hour late. Lily sat down, phone in hand, texting while she ate. Ethan cut the meat absently, his eyes drifting over my worn kitchen. "The food is good, Thomas," he said with a mocking edge, "but it must be exhausting. You should let restaurants handle it. All these old school dishes, too much work, and no one appreciates them." I chewed slowly, the brisket turning dry in my mouth. Lily did not lift her eyes, only muttered, "Uh-huh." I sat there watching them, feeling less like a father and more like the owner of a roadside diner they had stopped at out of politeness. Once I offered some advice when Ethan bragged about remodeling their apartment. The cooling system was overloaded and needed replacement. He laughed, shaking his head. "Thomas, you are a hands-on worker. But here we hire high-end contractors, not the kind of local labor you are used to. Do not worry about it." The phrase hands-on worker slashed through my pride. Air conditioning and repair was not glamorous, but it had paid for Lily's education, built her life, sustained our family. Yet to my son-in-law, it was nothing more than low-class labor. Our meetings grew fewer. Each time I called, Lily claimed she was busy. Once I drove nearly an hour to bring her a box of oranges from the farmer's market she used to love. I only saw her for a few minutes. She set the box aside, saying quickly, "I have an online meeting." "Thanks, Dad." I sat there hearing the clatter of her keyboard from the other room, wondering if I had become nothing more than an interruption. The worst came one evening when I showed up unannounced with a fan I had just repaired, thinking they might need it for the summer heat. Lily opened the door, her surprise far from happy. Ethan stood behind her with his arms crossed. "You do not need to do this," Lily said sharply. "We have everything we need. Keep your money and your things for yourself." Ethan smirked and added, "Thomas, you are simple, a working-class, practical guy. What you need is rest, not trying to prove you are useful." I stood there, the fan in my hand suddenly as heavy as lead. Their words echoed, each syllable cutting deep. Working class, simple, practical. My entire life reduced to a few mocking terms. That night I drove home along I-10, headlights streaking across the dark highway. I remembered nights holding Lily when she was small, her whisper in my ear, "I will always need you, Dad." Now it seemed I was only a wallet, an atom, a shadow unneeded in her glittering world. I knew the distance between us had not appeared out of nowhere. She had grown up in an environment I had paid for with sweat and health, yet that very world had taught her to dismiss the roots, to dismiss the man who had built the ground beneath her. At home, I looked at the photo on the shelf. Lily as a child, pigtails, eyes shining. I wondered where that little girl had gone, and who was this cold woman standing in her place. Conflict did not explode in shouts. It crept in quietly through indifferent glances, cutting remarks, mocking smiles, until one day I realized I had been pushed out of my own daughter's world. That night, after seeing the photo of the Rolex, I sat alone in the kitchen. The yellow light spilled across the worn wooden table. In front of me lay the navy socks, worth less than $10. I picked them up, my fingers rubbing the coarse fabric, and suddenly they felt heavy, like a verdict pressed into my hand. A pair of socks. That was all my daughter thought I deserved on Father's Day. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like hammers pounding against my temples. I closed my eyes, and the memories came flooding back. Every call, every desperate voice of Lily echoed inside me. Once, in the middle of the night, the phone rang. Her voice trembled through the line. "Dad, it is urgent. The hospital says we need a deposit for Ethan's test. 10,000. Please help me. I will pay you back tomorrow." I did not hesitate. I threw on my coat, logged into the bank, and wired the money immediately. Not a single question was asked. I was afraid that even a moment's delay could put my daughter at risk. Another time, Lily called, her voice breaking. "Dad, it is an emergency. If we do not pay rent this month, Ethan and I will be kicked out. I have no one else to turn to but you." I was on a roof repairing a unit, sweat soaking through my shirt. But when I heard her crying, my heart clenched. That night, I wired the money again, telling myself that at least my daughter still came to me. There were countless times like that. Medical bills, urgent expenses. "Only you can help me, Dad." I believed them all. I sold off old tools, postponed repairing my roof, and even canceled a doctor's appointment in Houston for myself just to scrape together the cash Lily asked for. I told myself money could always be earned again. But a child, you only get one. Now in front of me, a lifeless pair of socks. On the laptop screen, a Rolex gleamed on another man's wrist. All those urgent needs had been wrapped up in a luxury watch box. My chest tightened, not because of the money lost, but because of the trust destroyed. I stood and walked into the small office beside the living room. In the desk drawer was a stack of bank papers, bills, and receipts. I switched on the lamp, pulled out folders. The black ink shouted back at me. Wire transfer, 5,000. Wire transfer, 10,000. Wire transfer, 7,500. The date stretched across 4 long years. The sum was larger than I had ever allowed myself to imagine. I flipped through each sheet, my heart pounding. Each time my daughter had sobbed, I had opened my wallet without looking back. And now all of it stared back at me like cold blades. I took a red pen, circled every transfer, connecting them in a long line across the paper. That red streak looked like blood running through my life, a record of a father's blind devotion. I glanced at the socks on the corner of the desk. The lamp made the $7.99 tag blaze bright. I understood then. It was not just a careless gift. It was a symbol of disdain, a silent message. You are worth no more than this. My calloused hands trembled. For a lifetime, I had believed that love and sacrifice would be cherished. But it was that blind love that had turned me into an ATM. I had let myself be used for far too long. In that moment, a voice inside me rang clear. Enough. I gathered the papers, shoved them back into the drawer. I gripped the socks tightly in my fist as if clutching the insult itself. Then I exhaled, and a decision rose sharp and final, an arrow that could not be turned back. From now on, not another dollar. No more midnight transfers. No more selling what I needed for vague, urgent expenses. No more believing in tears and empty promises. Outside the window, Texas night had fallen. The sound of insects echoed in the dark. I sat still, feeling both pain and relief, as if a door had slammed shut behind me, opening to another path. I knew Lily would not take this lightly, but once I had seen that Rolex, there was no return. I set the socks back on the desk. They would remain there, a reminder. Not to fuel hatred toward my daughter, but to remind me of the day I woke up. The day I understood that love must be bound by limits. Without them, it will be trampled under the heels of selfishness. The ache in me had not faded, but beneath it, a layer of steel was forming, and I knew life would never be the same again. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Sunlight from San Antonio slipped through the thin curtains and struck the yellowed wall clock. I rose, washed my face in cold water, and stared into the mirror. The man there had salt and pepper hair, deep shadows beneath his eyes, rough hands scarred by years of labor. But in those eyes, for the first time in many years, there was resolve. I ate a simple breakfast of black coffee and toast, no longer the rushed mornings of work or hurrying to the bank to wire money somewhere else. Today I was going to the bank for another reason. My old truck coughed to life and carried me to the Wells Fargo branch on Broadway. Inside, the air conditioning blew cool, the tile floor gleamed, and the scent of disinfectant mingled with the smell of fresh coffee from the machine. I took a number and sat on a plastic chair, my hands clasped together. With each passing minute, I heard my heart beat, steady as a hammer striking iron. When my number was called, I stepped to the counter. The manager, a thin man with metal-rimmed glasses, looked up. "Good morning, Mr. Grayson. What can we do for you today?" I laid the papers on the counter, my voice firm. "I want to cancel all secondary access to my account. The name Lily Grayson, remove it. From today, it is only me." The manager blinked in surprise, then nodded. "Certainly. We can do that. But are you sure if we proceed, she will no longer withdraw or view any transaction?" "I am sure," I answered without hesitation. He flipped through his ledger, tapped the keys, then handed me a form. I signed, the pen trembling slightly, but the stroke steady. As the ink dried on the last line, I felt a rope around my chest snap free. The manager clipped the form into a folder and confirmed, "Effective immediately." I walked out into the blazing Texas noon. The heat slammed against my face, but inside I felt cooler than I had in years. That afternoon, I met Jack Turner, an old friend from high school baseball days. Jack now worked as an independent lawyer, his small office perched above a red brick building downtown. The room was cluttered, law books stacked on shelves, files scattered across his desk. Jack sat there, broad-shouldered, hair grayer than I remembered, his smile unchanged. "Tommy, it has been a long time," Jack said, clapping my shoulder. "I could tell from your voice that this was serious." I sat down and placed the bank papers on his desk. "I want to rewrite my will, and I need a new account as soon as possible." Jack raised an eyebrow but asked no questions. He opened his notebook, pen in hand. "Right, what changes?" I drew a breath. "Everything, the shop, the truck, the savings. Lily will not touch it again. I want a trust, something for a purpose I believe in. I have not decided exactly what yet, but she will not see another dime." Jack nodded, jotting notes. "Understood. You are not the first man to sit here with that story, but hearing it from you, It stings. I remember how you gave your whole life to Lily. I let out a bitter laugh. Maybe that is exactly why I need to do this. I let myself be used for far too long. We worked through the details for nearly 2 hours. Jack explained how to open a separate account, sever all ties to Lily. I signed no more documents, and when I left, I carried a draft of a new will folded carefully in my pocket. It felt like laying bricks for a new wall of protection. On the way home, I stopped at a hardware store near Market Square. It had been years since I bought anything for myself. I walked down the aisles, past shining wrenches, multi-use toolkits, and a set of modern gauges for HVAC systems. I touched each item the way a child fingers toys in a store. I chose a state-of-the-art air conditioning toolkit, nearly $800. Once I would have hesitated, thinking that money should be saved for Lily. But today I swiped my card without pause. As the clerk packed the box, my chest felt lighter. For the first time in years, I had bought something that served only me and my work. That evening, I returned to my small shop. The familiar scent of oil and steel wrapped around me like home. I opened a drawer stuffed with old receipts, each one a wire transfer under Lily's name. Medical bills, urgent rent, school supplies. I sat at the table and cut them one by one. The sound of scissors slicing filled the silence. Slowly, each cut felt like severing another chain. When the scraps piled high, I swept them into the trash. I stood there watching, my chest torn between bitterness and relief. Bitter because I had never imagined doing this to my daughter. Relieved because at last I had taken back control. I took the socks Lily had given me and pinned them to the wall above my desk, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. Each time I looked at them, I would remember the day I woke up. The day I began to live without bowing my head. Night fell. I sat alone in the shop under the dim hum of fluorescent lights. On the desk lay the new toolkit, gleaming like a promise of a different beginning. I drew a long breath, listening to the low whir of the air conditioner overhead, and for the first time in years, I felt I had done something right for myself. No announcements, no arguments. Quietly, I had cut the ties. And from this day forward, my path would be different. 2 days after I cut off the access, the phone on my kitchen table began to ring without rest. The first call was from Lily. Her name lit up the screen, but I let it ring until it died. A minute later, a voicemail appeared. I pressed play, and her voice spilled out, sharp and demanding. "Dad, you are being unreasonable. I just went to the store, and my card was declined. Must be a system error. Call the bank right now. Fix this now." I sat still, arms folded, hearing every word. Not a single apology, not a trace of concern for me. Only a command. That afternoon, 3 more calls. Another voicemail, longer this time. Her voice shaking but laced with anger. "Dad, I cannot believe you would do this to me. I have bills to pay. I cannot be cut off like this. You have a responsibility to my family. Do not let me down." I opened the drawer slowly, took out a small leather notebook, and copied her words verbatim. Every sentence, every period. I wrote the date and time, saved the recordings. No reply, no return call, just documentation like a quiet investigator taking notes. On the third day, Ethan stepped in. An email arrived, the subject cold and clinical. Financial obligations. Immediate attention required. The body was written in stiff legal language, precise but empty. "Thomas, you are creating financial hardship for your daughter and our family. You must understand that there are family obligations that cannot be avoided. If you do not restore access, we will be forced to consider legal action. This is the final warning." I read each line slowly, calmly, as if it were the morning paper. Then I printed the email, clipped it into the growing file. In the margin I wrote, "Legal threat, Ethan Thompson, date, time." Afterwards, I brewed a cup of black coffee and sat on the porch, watching the Texas sky fade to dusk. The phone kept ringing every day. Some days Lily called 10 times straight, her voice growing harsher. "Dad, I cannot live like this. You are ruining everything. You are humiliating me in front of Ethan and his family. Stop this nonsense." I listened, noted it down. No anger, no arguments. Each word was simply another piece of the puzzle. Now and then, buried between the accusations, There was a flicker of pleading. Dad, please, I just need a little, only for this month. I promise I will pay you back. But the voice lacked sincerity, like an actor repeating an old script worn thin. I wrote it all down the same, but my heart no longer ached. On Friday night, I opened my laptop and arranged everything. Voicemails, emails, bank statements, signed documents from Jack. I slid them into a black folder and labeled it Records, Lily and Ethan. Closing it felt like raising a shield. Through it all, I realized something. Silence is a kind of power. Each time the phone vibrated, instead of answering, I let it record. Each email I printed and filed. They believed my silence was weakness. In truth, it was preparation. I was no longer reacting with emotion. I was preparing for the day when the truth would need to be placed on the table, in full view of everyone. Night settled, my house resting in stillness. Only the chirp of crickets outside, the hum of the air conditioner. I sat at my desk, staring at the socks pinned to the wall. Below them, the thick black folder. A symbol of contempt, a record of truth. I knew this was only the beginning, but this time I was not trembling anymore. I was ready. That afternoon, the late autumn sunlight stretched across the road leading to Ethan's mansion. From the gate, Thomas could already see the line of luxury cars parked in sequence, their polished license plates catching the golden light. Inside, music pulsed, laughter mingled with the chime of clinking glasses. Just as he had suspected, this was the day Ethan and Lily would put themselves on display. Thomas stepped into the foyer. No one noticed at first. The crowd was gathered around Lily, the daughter he had raised all those years. She wore a striking red dress, a string of pearls around her neck, her hand resting lightly on her husband's shoulder, as if inviting the whole world to witness her claim. Her voice rang out through the room, confident and clear. Thanks to the support of Ethan and his family, I've been given a new position in the company, marketing director. This is truly a big step forward. Around her, aunts and uncles nodded and applauded. Some whispered praise, their eyes filled with admiration. Ethan stood beside her, draped in a perfectly tailored navy suit, the faint smirk of a man watching the product of his craftsmanship. Thomas quietly moved to a corner, draping his coat over a chair, revealing a slim folder and a thick envelope in his hand. He poured himself a glass of water, sipping slowly. No one noticed until the family's unofficial MC, an uncle on Lily's side, invited Ethan to say a few words about a devoted wife and a model daughter. Ethan smiled, adjusting his tie. I'm truly proud. Lily isn't just a wonderful wife. She's also a daughter who takes care of her father. She's made sure he lives comfortably, without lacking anything. I'm lucky to have such a woman by my side. Applause swelled. Lily tilted her head and smiled, triumphant. In that moment, Thomas set his glass down and stood. The room turned. His voice was calm, measured, each word slicing through the air like a sharp blade. I have something to say. The chatter died instantly. Glasses lowered mid-toast. Ethan's brows lifted. Lily, startled for a moment, quickly recovered and moved toward him. Dad, what is it? This is a happy... Thomas raised a hand to stop her. He opened the folder and pulled out several printed pages, the figures of tens of thousands of dollars stark on the paper. He held them up for all to see. These are bank statements. Over the past 2 years, there have been dozens of large transfers from my account to Lily's, each one marked as medical bills, urgent expenses. I believed them. I thought my daughter was truly in need. A ripple moved through the crowd. Lily's face drained of color, her fingers clutching her dress. But then this past Father's Day, I received a pair of socks, $15. And this man here... Thomas turned, pointing directly at Lily's father-in-law in the front row, frozen in his chair. He received a Rolex, $15,000. He placed the thick envelope on the table, opening it so all could see the receipt from Oak Street Jewelers, signed and stamped. All paid for on my credit card. Silence, thick and suffocating. The background music still trickled from the speakers, but no one moved. No one dared lift a fork. Thomas inhaled, looking straight at Lily, not with fury, but with a cold, undeniable truth. My daughter turned a father's love into her spending money, and her husband, his gaze shifted to Ethan, not only went along with it, but sent me an email threatening legal action, calling it a financial obligation. Here, He pulled out more pages, Ethan's email in black and white. All eyes turned toward the young couple. Ethan stiffened, forcing a thin smile. Thomas, I think you're misunderstanding. This isn't... No misunderstanding, Thomas cut in. Every fact is here. I don't need an argument. The socks and the Rolex speak for themselves. Nah, a sigh broke from an aunt at the far end of the table. An uncle shook his head. Whispering surged like water through a cracked dam. Used her father's money to buy a Rolex for her father-in-law. Shameful. No way to deny that. Lily tried to smile, her voice shaking. Dad, I just wanted him to be happy. I didn't. Thomas closed the folder, his tone final. No need to explain. The gift says it all. He sat down. No one spoke. The clinking of silverware ceased. The earlier cheer had drained from the room, leaving only the weight of exposure. Ethan and Lily stood frozen, faces flushed, caught between staying and walking out. The father-in-law, the Rolex recipient, drew his hands into his lap, avoiding every eye in the room. And Thomas, the father they had belittled, sat calm, his gaze sharp, as if he had just placed the final, inescapable move on a chessboard. He hadn't needed to shout. The truth had been more than enough to bring the whole room crashing down. The next day, the rumor spread across San Antonio faster than a summer wind sweeping through its dusty streets. No one mentioned the socks anymore. Everyone spoke about the Rolex. Ethan's relatives whispered at dinner tables, at church pews, in small cafes. Lily's name came laced with smirks. The image of the perfect daughter-in-law crumbled in a single night. William's family, once so proud of their polished, powerful reputation, felt as if they had been slapped in public. William himself, who had flaunted the Rolex online with a glossy caption, was so furious he refused to even look at Lily again. He called Ethan directly, declaring that from this day forward, Lily was to be cut off from every account, every ledger. A liar, a parasite who leeches off her father and disgraces this family's honor. His words fell heavy as stone, sharp as a hammer blow. Ethan, who once strutted as if he stood at the summit, was abruptly shoved aside. The family company he bragged about inheriting now regarded him with contempt. A man who couldn't even keep his household in order. How could he be trusted with the business? In meetings, his voice was ignored. All questions went straight to William or other members. The chair Ethan believed was secured beneath him wobbled, sliding further out of reach with each passing day. Lily's friends, who once showered her with likes and praise on every post, quietly tapped unfollow. Others did worse, reshared the story with mocking emojis. At private gatherings, she overheard her name paired with the words socks and Rolex, a cruel, lasting joke. People repeated it with cutting irony. The daughter who bought her father a gift cheaper than lunch but splurged on her father-in-law. That label clung to her like tar, impossible to peel off. In their neighborhood, where once neighbors greeted Lily with smiles, they now only gave curt nods before turning away. In a southern town like San Antonio, family honor was weightier than gold. Once cracked, it was nearly impossible to repair. Back in their home, Ethan and Lily faced only each other, and the walls shook with constant fights. Ethan blamed Lily. Lily turned on Ethan for failing to defend her. Doors slammed, plates shattered, and lights went dark earlier than ever. Their house became nothing more than a cold, hollow shell. Meanwhile, Thomas remained silent. He didn't need to add a single word. The truth had already done the work for him. He rose early, opened his shop, and polished his new set of tools. Neighbors greeted him with newfound respect. People knew who he was, the man who raised his daughter with sweat and sacrifice. And deep down, Thomas understood. His true worth was never measured in money, but in the truth laid bare for all to see. Lily, Ethan, and their proud family had traded their honor for the shine of a watch. And the weight of that choice was theirs alone to bear. Every morning in San Antonio began the same for Thomas. He rose early, brewed a hot cup of black coffee, and unlocked the door of his small HVAC shop on the corner he had worked for decades. The little bell jingled as the wooden door swung open, carried in the cool morning breeze. Inside, the mingling scents of machine oil, metal, and wood greeted him. Dry, warm, and familiar, just like his life itself. People were used to seeing Thomas in his faded gray t-shirt, tools in hand, hair streaked with a silver. but eyes steady and clear. He fixed air conditioners for neighbors, checked furnaces for the elderly, and replaced filters in homes with children suffering from allergies. For Thomas, each job mattered, not only for the paycheck but for the connection it gave him to the community he had always served. The gleaming Rolex was gone. Thomas had taken it back to Oak Street Jewelers, the same place where he had once exposed its cost before the family. The owner, who knew the story, nodded silently and bought it back at full value. Thomas did not keep the money for himself. Instead, he created the San Antonio HVAC Fund, a small foundation to help young people train in the trade that had carried him through life. Not everyone can go to college, but everyone deserves a fair chance to earn an honest living, he said at the first gathering with local youth. Javier, a 17-year-old boy from a Mexican family, became the fund's first scholarship recipient. His eyes lit up the moment he stepped into the shop, seeing the tools neatly lined up on the shelves. Thomas handed him his old screwdriver and said, "This fed my family for years. Now it begins a new journey with you." Javier clutched it as though holding his true future. In the days that followed, more young people came. Some had dropped out of school, others washed cars for a living, and a few had just left juvenile detention. Thomas did not judge. He listened, guided them step by step, and taught them the craft. He discovered that the real joy wasn't in hoarding what he had, but in seeing someone else rise because of a chance he had offered. On the wall by the front window hung a pair of socks. Not new socks, but the socks. Those $15 Navy socks Lily had given him on Father's Day. Thomas hadn't thrown them away. He pinned them there not out of bitterness, but as a symbol, a reminder that he had walked through humiliation, touched the bottom of disappointment, and from there had stood back up, stronger than before. When customers asked, he would smile faintly and reply, "Those are the most expensive socks of my life. They taught me the value of respect." One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the glass and dust particles shimmered like flecks of gold in the air, Thomas sat in a handmade wooden chair and sipped lukewarm coffee. Around him, the shop buzzed with young apprentices laughing and testing their hands on air conditioning parts under his guidance. The noise was rough but filled with hope, and it made him smile. No more anger, no more bitterness. Thomas knew he had chosen the right path. He didn't need anyone's apology, not Lily's, not Ethan's. Justice didn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it came from how you chose to live afterward. He had chosen peace. He had chosen to turn a pair of cheap socks into a symbol that closed one chapter and opened another, one filled with light, truth, and rebirth. That was his quietest yet truest victory. And now, if you are listening to this story, tell me what you think. Have you ever experienced a moment when a small gift revealed disrespect or injustice within your family or in a relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments because I believe every story holds the power to heal someone else. Don't forget to like if this story touched you and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more journeys where silence, truth, and emotional justice always find their voice.